Mechelle Wingle is a founding partner of the Wholeness Network. She is a gifted teacher and mentor. She is continually learning and developing her gifts. Expanding truth is her delight. Mechelle is certified in multiple healing modalities as well as cognitive behavioral therapy. She loves to help humanity find healing and wholeness.
Have you ever walked into a room and you just kind of knew something had just happened? And what do we all do? Our eyes get big and we say, what? Well, what is that actually that's going on? What is happening there? The other day, I want to go back one. The other day, it's been a while ago. I was flipping through Amazon Prime and I came across a documentary on President Garfield. And it was one of those transcendent moments that taught me more than just the history on the page. President Garfield was such a unique individual. He was born in Ohio, and his father died in a farm fire, and so they became very poor. And when he got older, his mom gave him her life savings of $17, and he went off to school. He worked as a custodian for the first semester, and by the second semester, he was actually teaching several subjects in the college. So very unique individual. He was a commander or an officer in the Civil War, and he was actually elected to an office while he was serving, went to speak with President Lincoln at the time, and President Lincoln said, I need you back here serving where you have been elected. So he left his post in the office in the military and went back and served. He was actually not running for president. But when the Republican Party was holding their electoral, for their little, where they were putting their person up, whatever that's called, somebody yelled out, we want Garfield. And he was put on the ballot, and he became the Republican candidate and won the presidency. He was only a president for about 200 days when he was shot. They still keep his spine where the bullet went through. In today's time, doctors say it would be probably a 2 or 3 day stay in the hospital. But President Garfield died of what was called sepsis, which is the Greek term meaning to make rotten. When the bullet hit him, the first thing that needed to be done was the bullet needed to be removed. So with unwashed tools and hands, doctors prodded the wound several times. One of the funny things, when they were worried about his nutrition, he was given enemas, and not just any enema. This one had egg yolk, bouillon, whiskey, some opium, some milk. Pretty healthy. But that was the time, heated to 100 degrees, and that was to bring him back to health nutritionally. Hand washing was discovered in the 1840s. It was kind of thought in 1840s in Hungary. But it had been a debated event for 50 years called the germ theory. There was no definition of what we consider germs back then. It was always about botany and germination. The germ theory that we understand now wasn't included in the dictionary until 1915. And one of my favorite quotes of all times called it the germ theory superstition and humbug. They didn't want to be afraid of something that they could not see. So I really feel like we're in a place where we are repeating history. We're learning this lesson one more time, and that's what I want to talk about today. In 1959, there started the idea of emotional contagion theory. This idea that emotions could be transferred maybe from one another, like a germ. You know, being an empath has become kind of a new word. And there are a lot of people that are starting to identify with this understanding of being an empath or being able to feel someone else's emotions. But if you were to look up in the dictionary, you would see that the word empath is still considered paranormal. Still considered a paranormal phenomenon. But it's tricky because just like back in the germ theory, there are those that are more immune. And so we don't always get the same result when someone's exposed to germs or to emotion. And so it's been keeping us a little bit stuck. But I ask you, can you relate? Have you ever had a mood change that was just kind of quick? Is there a place that you go that just has a feel to it, whether good or bad? There's just a certain feeling there. Or do you sometimes know things about people or understand them without words being expressed? Maybe these are unseen things taking up time and space. Or maybe it's simply Newton's law that whatever action, there's an opposite and equal reaction. Whatever it is, we need to have some remedies for the contagions that we have. And at this point, all of the remedies that we have are considered alternative medicine, alternative choices. Another thought about these is, can they be passed on? Can they be generational? Our Leah calls these emotional viruses, which I think is a phenomenal term because a virus not only multiplies, but the host takes it on as their own and feeds it and helps it expand. Doesn't know the difference between itself and the other person. And so sometimes these emotions do run generationally through us. I don't know. Maybe it's just suspicion and humbug. So there's been a couple of people that have kind of tried to document what I'm talking about. In Psychology Today, Dr. Greg Henriquez mapped the idea of positive emotions bringing us and giving us the idea of wanting to move towards it, and negative emotions wanting us to pull away. And that seems so simple. But we're starting to map the difference between these positive emotions. And then you have Dr. Hawkins, who I love, understood that there are emotions that degenerate the body. And there are emotions that regenerate the body. And it's not so strange because if you go to the doctor and you have stress, then you are more likely to suffer from obesity, heart disease, Alzheimer's, diabetes, depression, asthma, and gastrointestinal problems. So the state of stress, the emotion of stress, is something that does cause problems or dis-ease within our bodies. Brené Brown says, the body always keeps score and it will always win. Sometimes we can pretend like that emotion doesn't exist, but it will show up in the body. And that's the beauty of our bodies. It's the messenger to give us a communication of what's going on inside. So a while back, I was thinking about this. So I just want to test it out a little bit. So in the last little while, imagine a negative emotion. Bring into your mind a negative emotion that you have experienced. And I want you to imagine that that emotion presents itself as a shape. Just give it any shape. Give it a color, a sound, a scent. And then feel where that emotion exists in the body. And usually there's just a piece of the body that starts to tell you. And I want you to ask that emotion, or see if that emotion, how is it affecting the tissues around it? Just check in with that for a moment. Let that intelligence of that emotion come to the surface and be seen. Let it be heard. Let it have the ability to transform into something else. Let it be something new. So I worked a lot with weight loss. And I was sitting there one day because weight loss is something that's fascinating to me, because what works for this person doesn't work for this person. And so I question, I'd like to know some answers. And I also thought, we use this term, I'm an emotional eater, which I was. I understand what that means. And we use it all the time. But all of a sudden in that moment, the body broke into these 4 pieces. And I could see if I was emotionally eating, then I was feeding the emotional body. And yet the only thing we have to remedy weight is to punish and starve and hurt the physical body. And I started to think, what if the weight doesn't always exist in the physical body? And so it helped me kind of come up with some different ideas to help support people. So I want to tell you a little bit about the emotional body. The emotional body is childlike in nature. And sometimes we feel like it's the real us because it's so tender. But here's an example. When the physical body feels pain, then the emotional body reacts. When the mental body thinks, then the emotional body reacts. When the spiritual body experiences, then the emotional body reacts. So it's a dependent entity, it's not the genesis, which is another reason why it's really difficult to understand when it's being passed on, because it never really is the beginning of the source. The emotional body has been neglected because in the medical field, it helps our physical body beautifully. And in the spiritual, we have places of worship for ceremony and ritual, wherever that is. And the mental body helps through speaking and working things out. But the emotional body has been a need to be controlled. Stop crying. Just be happy. Calm down. Right? Men are specifically susceptible in this. And it's something that's not been fair. Children naturally release emotions. When they fall down and they hurt themselves, they cry. When we fall down as adults, the pain is no different. But we hold it together, keep it under control. And I'm not sure if that's the best answer. So emotional contagion needs a process. It's my plea today. I don't have all the answers, but I'm hoping as I share some of these ideas that we can come up with a solution. Something simple like washing of hands that can save lives. It needs to be simple. It needs to happen often. It needs to happen whether it's a result of our own emotional issues or whether we've taken on something from someone else. So I hope that you will find a process that works for you. Something that speaks to you about releasing, cleansing, supporting the emotional body. Thank you.